Good morning and welcome to Sunday Story Hour, where we share real life stories of how human design has helped our guests know themselves on a deep, transformative level. By knowing and trusting ourselves, we develop deeper, more honest relationships and unlock our true gifts. I'm Kathy Bashanko, and my guest this week is Brigitte Knight. Brigitte is a 3-5 splenic projector, and she's right angle cross of the four ways. And I met Brigitte I was first introduced to her through one of our former Sunday Story Hour guests. Marla Mack has a human design portal group, and Brigitte is a regular contributor in there. And that's where I was first exposed to her projector wisdom, and have since followed her and joined her group, which is Human Design in Action. And I'm really excited to get to know her a little bit more with you, because my experiences with Brigitte are more from the voyeur standpoint of a member in the community. We haven't had a whole lot of personal interaction, but her wisdom is amazing, and you guys are going to really learn a lot, I'm sure, as I will, from her. What is it, Brigitte, 16 years or so that you've been in here?
Since 2006. I've been studying human design. Right?
Yeah. So I'd love it if you just tell us a little bit about how you started in this crazy rabbit hole of human design and what it's been all about for you.
Wow. Well, that'll take several volumes, but I will try to keep
just a little bit.
Yeah.
Put 17 hours or 17 years into 5 minutes, please. No,
like 5 minutes. Yeah. Well, I first found out about human design in 2006, as I said, and I had been for the better part of 8 years sort of burning out because I had kind of left a very controlling religious background and was trying to figure out how to live outside of that in this world that I wasn't prepared for. And then starting a really hectic, busy job as an ICU nurse, and moving to California from Toronto, and just being away from everyone and everything and starting over. And I didn't realize I was a projector, but I always knew I needed rest and I needed alone time and all that, but I never got it when I was in that old space, right? So when I finally decided to be on my own, it was overwhelming and exhausting, and I was trying to work as an ICU nurse, which was hectic. And it's always what I wanted to do. And I thought I could do it because I lived with generators. So I always was like, but then I would crash and
their
burn.
energy.
Yeah, I would crash and burn and not know why. And nobody else knew why. And doctors didn't know why. So it was basically this pattern of burnout recovery, trying to do it the same, recover the same, and then maybe tweak it a little bit, hoping I'd get the formula right. Never got the formula right. So I had to back out of ICU nursing and go into a nursing and schedule that helped me rest. So it was nursing that didn't, tax my brain at all. It was just foo-foo nursing, I call it. So I met a woman that was a student of Karen Curry Parker, and she just happened to say to me one day, I don't even know how she approached it, but she shared it with me. And then she gave me a little printout of my design, just the basics. Oh, no, that's not true. She gave me all of my lines and stuff too. And I was like, I don't understand any of that. So I literally just stopped at, this is what you're designed to do. I'm like, perfect. That's who I am. And this is how you're designed to do it. And this is how much energy you have to do it. I was like, why didn't anybody tell me? Because I've been trying to do this opposite. So that was when I was like, oh, and I just from there started to reorganize my life, deliberately kind of choose things, people, places to work. And that plus therapy that I was forced to go to because I was just burning out and nobody knew why. And then doing the artist way with one of my other mentors that I've acquired over the years.
Julia Cameron's
Put it back together again.
Are you talking about Julia Cameron's book, The Artist Way?
Yeah, it's Julia Cameron's book. I live in LA, and one of my other friends I live near Venice Beach, and woo capital of the West Side. and one of my friends introduced me to that, and we were doing some art together. So I happened to just run into a sign that said Artist Way, Bodhi Tree bookstore. and it was a 12-week in-person course.
Oh,
And
wow.
it was amazing. It like changed my life. But the whole time I was surrounded by artists, industry types, because I live here in LA. So it's just the whole industry. So there are all these stuck artists in there, stuck composers, stuck literal artists, stuck screenwriters, all that. And I remember this one painter, he said to me, "What are you doing here? You're a nurse. What are you doing here?" I'll never forget it because I didn't have an answer. I think my answer was just sarcastic back. "What are you doing here?" But I, over time, realized that it doesn't matter who we are. We're here to create a life. And the Artist's Way structure is about releasing creativity. It's about digging deep. What did you always want? What would it look like? Let's do it. Let's start somewhere. And that's when I just kind of mushed human design and the Artist's Way together. And I'm much better at controlling my burnout now
Yeah.
and not getting into it, I should say.
Interesting. I actually have started that book twice, but like many things, I didn't have the energy to finish it. And
I don't
I
think it's easy to do on your own. That's why I kind of made a
yeah,
point of saying that, because you have to either do it in small groups, like of your friends or something, or the way I did it, which was like 40 people. And
yeah,
it was just so much. It was a lot of fun and a lot of work, like deep work.
yeah. So okay, so that was at the same around the same time that you found you were a projector, or was it which one
Yeah,
happened?
I think I think I got it backwards. I think I in 2005 I took that Artist Way
Okay.
course and I started facilitating it, so I was always there. And then in 2006 I bumped into human design.
Okay. And so what was the so two parts of the same question. What was the part of your design that you went, "Oh, that makes total sense." And then what was the part that you were like, "What?" You know?
I think the parts that made sense to me were basically who I was. Like I was here to guide, and I had been doing that since I was right out of college working at the Justice Department in Toronto. And I had like this office that was way away from everybody. And there was a chair that I used to put all my files on. And somebody came in one day, moved the file, sat down, and just started telling me their problems. So they started calling me the psychiatrist. So when I ran into human design, I was like, that's absolutely who I am. I just do that naturally,
Mm-hmm.
right? And people seem to find me, and I willingly do it, and that's another burnout piece, right? You don't know that you can say no, kind of thing. And then the part about strategy, waiting for invitations, someone had said that to me when I was much younger, a teenager, and they said, why don't you just say, I have a suggestion before you say anything. And I was so insulted. It was a man telling me that because in the religion I grew up in, I was one of Jehovah's Witnesses. And of course, in some of these Christian religions, they teach like the man is the head of the house and all the way down, right? So
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't figure out why I had all these great ideas as a projector, but I was always kind of getting in trouble. And nobody wanted to do any of them when they would have saved the day.
Right.
And he said, why don't you try saying, I have a suggestion, can I share? And it's funny that now, full circle, I'm like, he was right. He didn't know what he was, it had anything to do, but it
Right.
was really good advice.
He wasn't
So
just
those were the two
putting you
things.
in your place as a woman, like as it probably
That's what
sounds right.
you're thinking that then. It was
Right.
hard to kind of live this double life of being in this organization that's a little bit isolated, right? Being in there where that's what you're taught, and then working at the Department of Justice where you're surrounded by female lawyers and paralegals and, heavy national cases. And it's just, and I'm that kind of person, let's go. And then you're at home and you're kind of squashed. So that took energy as well to
Yeah.
try to straddle those two lives. So I chose one, and I chose the hardest one because I'm gate 28 and that's what we do.
Right. Yeah. And I have gate 38. So we have that electromagnetic connection of struggle. So
Yeah.
I want to tell a little story just because I don't want to forget about it. So I alluded to this before we started to talk today, but when for everyone listening, when Brigitte and I were talking leading up to this, we've had a couple calls, and for some reason, every time we would talk, I would get in this weird place of self-criticism that I feel like I have moved beyond for the most part, right? And so in preparing for this conversation, I was looking at our connection chart, and all of a sudden I realized, oh, you have that channel of judgment that my husband has. I don't have either of those gates. And we went through a huge dynamic in our relationship of me feeling criticized by him all the time. And then me realizing that I was amplifying that energy big time back to him. And this whole thing that I have moved beyond with him. But what was happening was, in dealing with you, I was feeling it in a different era or aura that I wasn't used to it. And it was kind of like the universe was saying, have you really healed this? Do you really trust that you are enough and you're doing your best and you're trying to do things the way that are right for you and for the world and all this stuff? Or are you still looking for that other person to show you that you're doing things correctly, giving you that encouragement? And then you add to that you and I both share the beautiful energy of the 2644, which I've heard people say. Someone I really was talking to recently calls it the no BS channel. It's she called it the bullshit detector, or bullshit buster is what she called it, because she really said that energy, you cannot fool it. So this piercing, splenic power of that energy coming from you with this other energy was like really like causing me to say, oh, and my mind was telling me all the old stories it used to say of like, she's got to think you're stupid. You just said that, and that's not what you meant. And now and so it was really interesting for me in this situation to, rather than have any of that live for a long time, even when it was happening, I think I even voiced you a couple of times, I wonder why I keep feeling this.
Yeah.
And so then when I looked at it and I was like, oh, that makes so much sense. And it took away all its power. And that for me has been one of the biggest things of my human design journey, is that my mind used to tell me all kinds of stuff that kept me feeling like, I'm the youngest of 9 kids. I was the idiot. I was the annoying one. I was everything, right? Even though I'm probably, I don't want to, sound like I'm being, degrading my family. I was definitely as intelligent or more so than everybody in my family, right? But yet this is how you feel because you're the baby. So all that stuff I was bringing to this, it was just really neat to be able to see it when I can look at it and see where the story comes from. And it's just an energy thing that I'm feeling that I haven't felt in this fashion before. And so I just wanted to share that because it was kind of cool for me to figure that out. So
Yeah, that I love that you did that. I love that you did that, because that's what I enjoy the most about human design, is kind of understanding the connection, understanding the other, and really kind of reflecting on our part in it. And like this person, me, I just walked into the room, right? Or I walked onto Zoom or sat here,
yeah,
and you're reacting, but I haven't actually done or said anything.
right.
Right. And I think sometimes when people are first learning human design, they know how life-changing it can be and so forth, right? And it's very all about them, which it should be, right? But as they progress, I think one of the fastest ways to learn human design is to spend some time observing yourself in relation to the other. What's it like to be with this manifesting generator? What's it like to be with this manifesting generator? And getting curious about that. That's where the learning is. That's where you learn about what you're carrying into the room. How are people reacting to that, right? And then you get the practice of, well, what are they doing that I recognize, and then I adjust or whatever, right? So I love that story, because in telling it, this is the first time I've heard it, right? In telling that story, it explains a lot of things that has happened in my life, because I don't think anyone's actually reflected that back to me in words, because they don't have the words, right? They think that, well, if I just say that, you know what, you're so bossy, you're so pushy, I've had people like, believe it or not, Kathy, I've had people turn to me and go, shut up. Nobody asked you. Get lost. You know, blah, blah. And I'm like, I'm sorry, I didn't even speak. And I have had that happen to me about 3 or 4 times in my life, and it's so spooky. I did not open my mouth. What are you? And they are mad, so they can't even engage in that conversation. So I've always wondered, what is it? Is that my fifth line? What is going on here? But the way that you're expressing it to me, I
Yeah.
wonder if there's something in their chart where they're like hearing voices or hearing me or hearing someone else and they think it's me, like a voice from the past. I don't know.
Well,
And
I think it's probably both, right? Because the fifth line shows people what they need to heal in a lot of ways, right? So when
yeah,
they're projecting whatever it is on you, that is about them and what they need
yeah,
to heal. And your energy provokes that. And as
right.
projectors, we, even when we're not a fifth line, like, I'm a 6-2, but there's this energy where, the projector aura really can like penetrate a person. It's deeply personal. So if a person is not okay with you knowing who they are,
Yeah,
because they're not healed yet and they feel that energy coming in, it's like they're already pushing back. So if that energy feels, then they feel that judgment in there, and judgment's a
right.
harsh word because it's not that you're judging, it's that you have the critical discernment to judge what needs to be fixed to bring more joy, da, 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 and that ability and that energy
Yeah.
scares the shit out of people. Right.
Yeah, I love that we're talking about this because, two projectors, when they get back get together, it's like words are in the air and suddenly they make sense. So I appreciate this conversation.
Yeah.
Um,
And Casey
yeah,
Daly's asking, do you have a defined head? She does, I don't. She's defined head Najna, I'm open head Najna. So just
yeah.
answer.
Did you throw my chart in the group? Because
It's
I
in the
thought,
group, yes. If you
yeah,
look, if you look at the top of the post for this video right now, there is a link you can click to open that window.
yeah,
There you go, brain. She's saying
yeah.
she's a 5-1 projector with defined head and ego. I think, yeah.
Yeah, so fascinating what it would be like if she and I came into connection, what that might feel like for her.
Yeah.
Either I've always described the five, it is a powerful, valuable profile, very valuable, right? But it does push on people, or they feel it, I should say. It's not like we're pushing anyone around. It's like they feel penetrated, they feel provoked to react to something. And if they don't like the feeling, if they're not ready for the feeling, the reactions are always either outsized or inappropriate, or they can't even explain it, right? So in terms of me over the years, even learning about my fifth line, I think one of the things I've noticed as I've been coaching human design uh, primarily is the parts of my chart, right, have come online gradually. I can read it in a book. I know what fifth line is. I know third. I know this. I know that. I know that, all up here, right? But as I talk about it and talk about it and talk about it, and as I see the reaction and I have time to reflect on it, I'm like, oh, that's what that is. So when you were speaking about, for example, the 4426, I, was taught that it is short form, the not bullshit, but the car salesman line, which is, they're going to say whatever they need to say to get it done, right? So it's integrity or not, it's
Mhm.
truth or not, it's, it has a purpose, right? If we need to survive something, we need to do whatever we got to do to get it done, right? To
Right.
survive. But in our everyday life, we don't need to be sketchy like that, right? So it serves the other purpose of being able to assess whether a person feels good, a situation feels good, and as a projector, an invitation, if it feels good, does it feel genuine? Like there's a depth to that, right? But I had an experience maybe 3 years ago where I was working with a person and I kept having this thing in my head where I felt this doesn't make sense. It doesn't feel right. I don't trust it. And I cannot explain why. The person hasn't done or said anything, but this is what is going on for me. And it really, I can even feel it as I'm speaking about it because it was just, I can't even control it, but I don't know what it is, but I don't trust this person. And I actually did what I've been taught to do. As a therapist, you get curious. So I went in and I said, can you, this is what I'm feeling. And I don't trust you. Actually said that. I don't, because this and 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 this. And they said, no, it's not like that at all. And I was like, okay, no problem. But I needed to do that. The feeling didn't go away, but at least I spoke it out loud and I was in a situation where I could do that. Right. And it's only maybe the last year when I was doing a reading for a client who has this same channel and I had to explain it to her. And I was like, oh, that's what that is.
That's how we learn everything, right? At least that's been for
Yeah.
me. I think most projectors, I never want to say all, but my experience is most projectors, we don't really objectively see ourselves. And especially me, I'm a second line. So I don't see myself at all. But as I'm speaking to someone else about a particular energy, I can often then even explain it from an experience of my own, oftentimes, and then be like, oh yeah, okay, yeah, you just learned something there totally about yourself. It's been really there are so many times where I'm like, oh, I wish I was recording myself right now, because
Right.
I told them, explained everything I've been wondering about, but now I don't, somewhere in my open ajna again, and we'll find it the next time someone draws it out, but
Right.
it's just like it goes away again. But yeah, so
Well,
that's
because I have a defined ajna, some things I remember and I write
Mhm.
everything down, but I have two solutions for that. One, I have one client who she's, runs an office. So she's really good about taking meeting notes. So as we're talking, she's just typing in a little thing, and then typing in a little thing, and then typing in a little thing. And one day she'd been doing that for like 9 months. And I said, wow, that was brilliant what I just said. Write that down. I heard myself say that because I'm stupid that
right.
way. And she did. She wrote, and I said, oh my gosh, I just realized, how do you feel about sending me your notes? Would that feel good to you? And she did. So I have this copious notebook of Brigitte isms, things that stuck with her that I'm delving into. And we had the same experience this week. And I said, okay, I need those notes. And then I realized I had a synchronous meeting this week with someone who was using the AI feature on Zoom. And I'm like, what is this newfangled thing? I keep seeing this popping
Right.
up in my Zoom meetings. And she sent me the result of it. And I'm like, okay, that was meant for me at this moment. We're going to be doing that from now on. We're going to be AI companioning everything.
Yeah, I've been using
So,
that Fathom note taker. In fact, I think I sent you something with it just
yeah,
this
you did.
week,
Mm-hmm.
because you were like, what did you say about whatever? And I just sent you the link because it was easier than me trying
Oh
to go
my
find
gosh.
it.
Isn't that
But it's
brilliant?
great. Oh my God, it's amazing.
I know. I love it. I
Yeah,
love
so
it.
I
So,
can find myself. In fact, there was a time I now do that with all my clients. And as for an open ajna, especially, there was something where I was talking to someone about something, and I was like, I love the way I explained that. I want to remember that so I can explain that to somebody else. And then I was able to go in and find it in there and listen to it again, and and really hone it. So that's
yeah.
been really wonderful. So I just noticed we've had a few comments. Marla says hi. And then
Hey, Marl.
Maria Ostby, I don't know if I'm saying her name right, said, love this. I'm a 4/6 emotional projector. She also has the 4426 line, and she sees into people. She's detective, and I feel the funny feeling, she said. So she relates to that.
You
So she
relate to that?
also,
Okay.
yeah,
Yeah.
right angle cross of the four ways, also like you. So and
I
if you
wonder,
don't mind,
can I
I'd
ask
like,
her a quick question? I'm curious where she feels it, because as I was speaking, it just felt like, crushing and, well, she can comment
where
later, but I'm just,
where she
yeah,
feels
like
which
she said
part.
she has that feeling with the 4426.
Okay.
Right? Like if she
Yeah.
feels
So
someone out of integrity, what does that do to her? Because as I was speaking, it was all coming back, and it's like I still can't find words for it, but I know the feeling.
well, I have that channel also. And so if it's okay, I'll tell you
Yeah,
how I kind of
sure.
feel. I often, when I'm speaking, get this feeling of, oh, you shouldn't be speaking, which is like an integrity thing of like, I know I shouldn't be saying this type of thing. Or if I feel like I should speak up about something, but I'm like hesitating and or whatever, I tend to feel it kind of, it's almost like
Like a
this
crushing here.
like a choking in,
Yeah,
crushing
that's
kind of
it.
feeling,
Yeah.
where it's like your heart is going up into your voice or your throat or something, like like either telling you say it or don't say it, like it's this weird thing. And I've never known it, I've never thought of that as my 2644, but everything is, related in some ways. And I do think it's interesting because I'm triple split and you have a small split, and I have the gate 21. So we're 9-0 right now, baby. We've got a everything's connected. Single definition 9-0. That is
You have the
really
22.
rare.
Do you have the
not have
22?
the
I need a
22.
22.
Well, you have a 22, you just don't have it defined. What
I don't have a 22.
we all have the 22. We all have the chart.
Okay.
And
Sorry.
you don't have it defined. So you have
I
you
have
hanging gate 12.
Yeah, so when we're talking about this crushing and say it or not say it kind of thing, I usually default on the don't say it, because growing up, people would come to me for the answers. Like you were explaining that, you were meant, told or implied that you were stupid, the stupid one, even though you knew, right? I had the opposite experience because of having the 1858. Like people knew I had the solution. Like the people who were ready for it and open and had a question, they were ready. So in my family, I was the one who had to always save the day. If there was something that I had to make speeches, I had to do things for my family that clean up the mess kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
Well, I was always used that way. And the same in growing up in the church, just thrown out front all the time, right? But when I spoke up without that invitation, if I offered a solution without that initial come do this,
Yes.
people reacted like I had stabbed them in the heart. I mean, I know that sounds really graphic, but their reflex was to, like, you have insulted me in the worst way possible. Like, worse than death is what you've done to me, like this outsized reaction, right? So, looking in my chart, I'm like, okay, I got that thing, and then I got this. And then over here, it's like either bold speech or not. And, when that 12 is not invited, it can sound bossy and it can sound directive, and it can, so I've learned all of that over time. Like, oh, when I'm not invited to speak into a situation, I can really knock somebody across the room. So when I feel anything that I think I want to say signs and symptoms, but I have signs of don't go there. And when I share that with people who have more outspokenness, or like generators who may have more invitation to be responding to things, right? So they can possibly react into it. When they're like, well, did you say something or did you do something? And I'm like, no, because if I do, it's not going to come out right. It's like, even if I coach it, which is what I tried to do my whole life, it's like, okay, I want to say this thing. I need to say this thing. Let me write it out 20 times and make sure I'm using, and it's just neutral as anything. Didn't matter. It did not matter. The energy is there all the time. It doesn't matter if I say, hello, isn't it a beautiful day? If you're not ready for that, you're not going to be happy that I said that. So I don't know if anyone on the listening to us today has that experience, but again, that's really taking the time to get to know yourself.
Yeah. And it's interesting when you shift from, so I want to back up a little bit to your experiment or your experience with early in your, and it's related to what we're talking about earlier in your experiment, because there's this, for me, the first few years was all about noticing this stuff, but getting stuck in it, because you notice for me, I would notice, oh yeah, I have this energy, and I have this, and it all just seemed like something more that was wrong with me, and something that was like I got really stuck in the bitterness of like, okay, I know all these things. Why am I not getting recognition? Why am I not, and you just kind of get stuck in that. And so I felt like there was this shift then that came at some point, maybe halfway in, like about really started to happen 2 or 3 years ago. But for me, honestly, I'm 7 years in, and the big shift was just maybe 1.5 years, 2 years ago, where I really felt I could shift from the thinking about it, beating myself, getting stuck, getting bitter, whatever, to the, oh, isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
And then letting it go and not getting attached to what it meant or what to do with it or what other people were going to think of it. And I think that was the biggest transformation for me, was when I didn't have to make everything be something I was going to change or fix or judge myself for, right? So, and I feel like I had a question there related to what you said, but I forgot.
I think the what you're asking is, what was it like as I was,
Yeah.
learning? What was my experience like maybe
Yeah.
at the
Yes.
beginning?
Thank you.
Right? Yeah. I think I did not have time or room to think about any of that stuff. As I said, I was in a pretty sort of survival mode, I would say, right?
Mhm.
Because I had physically burnt out, and I was like off work for a year trying to, on medical leave for a year, trying to get my energy back and just become a person again.
Right.
And then figure out, well, how am I not going to do this when I have to go work or go back to work? What am I going to do? And so forth. So learning my design, I glommed on to, you're not supposed to be doing this thing, this thing, this thing, this thing. So cross those off the list of the type of jobs you're going to take and so forth, right? So I really leaned into the practical side of my design. I didn't have time for gates. I didn't have time for planets, any of that stuff. It had to be, why are you here? How does this environment relationship satisfy that? Because that's the only way you're going to feel good, if you're able to do your projectorness in some way, or to be allowed to be yourself. And no one's trying to get you to hustle or, do anything outside of that. And then waiting for recognition and invitation. I think at the beginning, I leaned into invitation. Am I literally hearing, I invite you, or any word, and if I didn't hear it, clarifying it so I didn't fall into it, right? So those were the only things that I lived by for at least a decade or more. I knew all the other things in my chart here. I knew my 4323, I knew my 12, I knew my 1856, and I was like, okay, those things I have to watch out for, but I don't have to watch out for them, because as long as I speak in response to an invitation. And one of the things I learned too is, yeah, you can have the invitation on the front end, right? Like someone can ask you a question, how do I do this or whatever. And I call it being under the umbrella of the invitation. But I think that even as you go on in relationships, because of the energy of correction that I have in my chart, people can still have a reaction even though I'm under the umbrella, right? So I've observed that. I can even see it on Zoom calls when I'm speaking and someone's having a reaction to what I'm saying, even though I'm not speaking to them or anything that should be objectionable. So what I tend to do, or what I've learned to do, is review, check in, clarify that I still have the invitation, right? I know you came to me for coaching and so forth, but can I tell you how that hit me?
Yeah.
Is it okay? And I give them permission to say, you know what, I don't think I can take it right now. Like I actually tell them, did you know you're allowed to say that to me? Because here you are treating me as an expert. You've come here thinking I'm an expert, and I am in the sense that I know more about this thing than you do right now, right? So, but you're allowed to have a say in how this relationship goes, right? So you can tell me I don't want to talk about it, or I don't, but I'm going to ask you why. So can we have that agreement? So that's the other thing I learned, is how to communicate with people, right? Because that was always my challenge. My voice, my presence would throw people off. So I had to be conscious about, was I invited? What's going on here? So that's really what.
Yeah.
I didn't even spend time on my authority, to tell you the truth. Like oh yeah, I'm splenic. That's nice. Because I didn't know, I wasn't trained to use my intuition. I was trained against my intuition. It's like, it doesn't matter what you think or say or feel or whatever. This is what the Bible says. This is what our family's motto is. And this is what we do here. And so on, right? So I remember pushing back as a kid and going, is it okay if I just make a mistake? I remember saying that. Is it okay if I just have a thought and you just let it be a thought? I remember saying things like that as an 8-year-old. Like,
How was that responded to when you were 8? Like,
I
what was
don't think anybody really heard that. I don't think they even knew what that was. Like, what are you saying? Kind of thing, right? Because I kind of was in an environment of uh where they couldn't hear that. I don't,
yeah,
without going into too much detail, it's kind of
yeah,
like, what is that she's saying? I hear bells. Like, I don't
right,
know what's being said to me right now.
right.
So over time, so most of the time, my saying that over the years was more sarcastic than anything else, because I knew it wasn't going to be taken seriously and I
And
knew it wasn't heard. So I'd be like, is it okay if I can think, but like I would just make fun of it
yeah,
after a while, right? You develop your coping skills because it's like nobody cares what I think anyway. So
and
they only care when they need something.
here you find out you're a third line, so you're meant to have your greatest lessons often come from what doesn't work, right?
Mhm.
So, and then
Right.
you find out you're a heretic savior, right? So like how has trying to think exactly what I'm asking. I'm just wondering how this has impacted your relationship with anybody who you still were in relationship with, who is part of that religious community, and
Yeah.
if they think you're a heretic.
Oh, well, they did what they do to heretics, right?
Yeah.
So if you leave and you no longer live by the tenets of that faith,
Oh,
nobody can talk to you.
oh, okay. I didn't realize
So
that church was
cut
one of them.
off.
No,
Yeah, absolute cut off.
terrible.
Yeah.
It's
So
interesting.
that's
I have a friend who is a Jehovah Witness, and she's a manifester. And
wow.
I she's somebody I used to work with. We're friendly. She's much younger than I am. And at some point I said, I really want to run your chart, and she was open to the idea. So I ran her chart, and I'm like, oh honey, we got to have dinner. And tell her all
Yeah.
about what it means. Because I mean, imagine all the things about being a manifester woman in,
Yeah.
yeah, so, and in that community. And so, here,
Well, yeah, I tried reaching out to a community of ex Jehovah's Witnesses, right? Didn't go well because it feels like there's still sensitivity around horoscopes.
right.
We're taught not to do and be around certain things. And it's funny, like I never got any of that. Like people were afraid to go into other people's churches. And I grew up in Jamaica. Like part of my childhood was spent in Jamaica, and we shared a fence with the Adventist church. And then you could throw a stone and there was another church. And then down there was another church. And it was a small little community. So we were all mingled in. So I would go in there. I even went to their school. Like it wasn't a thing for me. But for many of them to hear that I've gone from this faith to human design, which can feel culty or scary, or you've gone into something new that's controlling. There's not I can't directly go at them. I have to do it through a blog or a talk that they might stumble into. And my about on my blogs says that I support ex-Mormons, Jehovah's Witnesses, religious trauma. I don't remember what it says, but
Right.
it says something like that. So people find that. And I think that's the best I can do at the moment. It's also I haven't always felt comfortable even talking about it,
Yeah.
but a manifester woman, as you were saying that, I was just thinking of being in there and seeing how many broken people there were
Mm-hmm.
in there, right? Um, and I always knew that the shunning thing that they did was just cruel. I just
Yeah.
never was never into it.
Yeah.
And the anti-LGBTQ. I mean, I'm like in high school and I go to an arts high school, so I'm surrounded by, people who are expressive and open with themselves as much as they could be at that time. And I was like called up on the carpet for being friends with them. And I'm like, I go to school. I'm like, I'm different enough already. You know, I go to
Yeah.
school with them. I don't. So I was always a bit of a heretic, if that's what you're asking as well.
But I think it's really interesting too. I was just getting this feeling while you're talking about some of this, like you see little seeds of this kind of behavior even within the human design community. Like there's the people who like, if you're not completely of the idea that only Ra had the path to the truth and nobody else can teach us anything new about human design. Like there are people who are just like, you know, you can't be here and you can't be part of our community because we don't agree with some opinion you hold about some gate or something, right? And
Mhm.
I kind of want to back up to when you were first talking about finding your chart or having it sent to you 17 years ago. And I wondered what that would have been like to be exposed to all this 17 years ago versus today, because today, if you like, even just 7 years ago when I found it to today, there's a huge difference. But I can Google anything in my chart and get tons of information. Half of it might be BS, half of it might be stuff made up by somebody who's 6 months into their experiment and read something and now thinks they know. You know what I mean? Or somebody, I'm not saying you can't be 6 months in and know, but I'm saying sometimes you don't and you put it out
Yeah.
there. So just sorting all that out, I wondered what it was like back then. It might have kept it simpler, right? Because there was not as much
Yeah, I want to say I think you're right, because there wasn't anything to go research all my gates and so forth, right? So
yeah.
even now when I meet people, they have so much knowledge that they've gleaned from books and so forth. And then I ask them a simple question that takes them to the basics and they struggle, or they're like, oh my God, how are you using that? How are you applying that? Did you use your strategy there? And they're like, what? What do you mean? Well, what is your strategy? And then they're like, oh, I have it here somewhere, kind of thing, right? So that they need to dive into the doing. So when I was first learned it, as I said, what I did right away was find out who her teacher was. And I signed up right away, and it was Karen Curry back then, Karen Curry Parker. And I signed up for her 12-month, 1 year, really, like, she was, in my mind, just starting to build what she has today, because
Had
it
she
was
even written the red book yet?
no red book, nothing. We had I want to say we had something called Audio Acrobat. So it was all audio that we were listening to and talking to each other audio. So I didn't know what anybody looked like. There was no community, and I'm learning human design from a manifesting generator. And I'm with, and I'm healing. So I'm saying stuff that's like, I need a therapist for what I'm saying, right? And that's the other thing about human design too, is some people coming into it are healing some deep stuff and they know human design can help, and they're thinking this community will be open to that. And it's like, that's not what we do here, and not everyone's comfortable with that. So I'm even looking for those people who feel like, and at least be able to guide them. Okay, we can do this, and then I can help you find that piece,
Yeah.
right? So yeah, the fact that I didn't have anything forced me to just be simple about everything. Type strategy, have no idea what my authority means, so type strategy it is. And that was, and it didn't confuse anything. So, and I always had my notes, like Karen would email us like the notes for the class, right? And you just print everything out. I have all of those from 2006. All my written, everything was hand, like everything now is, here's all the recordings and da 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 da, right? Which is great. And I know people who've gone through her 4 levels all the way through, no problem. And then it's now that they need to actually do the work, right? And to hear, like, they actually need to hear that, like, now the work begins, and how are you doing that, right? So that's where I see my role kind of today, is that, dude, I went through it the hard way. And as a line 3, there's a lot of things now that if I'd had a really awesome intuitive projector guide back then, I might have saved myself from a lot of problems. I know that now.
Yeah.
but I think I
Oh,
had to go through it to learn that.
so at what point did you feel, or do you feel, that you've really gotten to know your splenic authority? Like, where did that come in for you?
Also fairly recently.
Yeah.
Also, yeah, I feel like I'm maybe a few years ago, I wrote something, I was writing a blog, and I think I wrote something like about my strategy. I said, it's almost like my strategy and my splenic authority are one. And I remember making this gesture. Again, I'm probably talking to somebody and I went, I think right now they're just one. Like I don't feel them as separate. The response of my spleen is either it doesn't do anything or it's neutral, or I feel there's very physical symptoms or sensations that I have. Like I almost feel a gut pain, like a little bit deeper than butterflies. And I start to feel a little bit anxious if I'm hearing or like, I'm so sensitive now. Like the spleen is so well trained now, just from doing recognition and invitation. I think recognition came online before my spleen. So I learned invitation, and then I was like, okay, what is this, recognition? Oh, that's it. Oh, that's not it. Really learning what's the
Yeah.
flavor of a recognition in my experience, right? So that became the next marker of what I was going to do. And then my spleen, in terms of, do I need to run right now? That it's like someone's asking. I know sometimes people will say, can you do this, or can you answer this question for me, or can you do, and if I feel that feeling, it's literally a no. It's telling me I don't have the energy right now most of the time. It's saying, and I've come to be able to verbalize that, and people just are like, roll their eyeballs, because half the time I don't have, and my spleen says, no, you can't do that. No, don't do that. And I don't have a problem saying it. I don't have it right now. And then it gives people language to use with me. I'm just checking in if you have the bandwidth. Like, I think Marla uses that one a lot. So just checking if you have the bandwidth. If you have
That
it,
sounds like
can you
Marla.
do this for me? Yeah. So, and that's the beauty of understanding each other's types, is that she understands that that's a great way to work with me. Give me the space to accept
Right.
or not, right? And my spleen will still react. It'll be like, no, or oh yeah, I got time for that, no problem.
Yeah.
So most recently I put that together as being my spleen and my strategy working together.
Well, it's interesting too. I've thought about this a bit with the splenic authority, because splenic authority, in the hierarchy of authorities, is above ego authority, the willpower. But the will is a motor. And I think it's interesting that the spleen, the awareness of the spleen, is in hierarchy. It's above in authority realms than the motor of the will. And my will is that 2644 is a split for me. I'm triple split. So I've got 2644 is one of my groupings. I've got 1-8, the throat and the G center. And then I have the 3955 of the root and the solar plexus, right? So, the way getting that emotional energy of the root that's a hard thing to rely on, right? So I often, when I'm an energy projector, so I have that, even though that's my authority, oftentimes I would use my emotions to get things done in a way that wasn't necessarily nice. But that will center energy, I could just, I can. That's always that energy. Yeah, but should I? Probably not. And I wasn't listening to the other side, the spleen, that was and I think that's a beautiful channel, because it regulates that ability to know yes, you have the resources, but should you use them? I feel like that's what it says in this way. And so I didn't know what my spleen sounded like. I have a defined spleen. It's not my authority, but I didn't know what it was until one day it basically knocked me down, and I had a really extreme reaction to what had just happened to me. And then I had to tap on it, because I was like, you're triggered about something. What is this all about? And I realized that I had been all like constantly in my life ignoring my spleen, saying, this is not for you. You don't have the energy for this. You don't have this is not the right thing. This is dangerous, whatever it was. I was ignoring it. And I learned about it in hindsight when I just realized, okay, every time you've gotten basically hurt in your life physically, it's usually because, I shouldn't say every time, but many times, it's because you ignored that and you got in your head and did something anyway. And so as a third line, I'm wondering, do you feel like you learned about your spleen in hindsight, or was it just something where one day you were like, oh, here it is?
Oh, it was that. It was just one day I was like, oh, just like I use the expression, it came online just the other day. Like this thing, I knew it here, but it finally came online. And I've been doing it, but I didn't make the connection until something jogged it. When you were talking about the intuition of the spleen and the will center, and the I have the ability, maybe I have some energy. I only have the will center where I'm at the lower end of my chart. I have the will center, the spleen, and the root, right? So thinking about my background again, and this is also helpful for coaches, is to think about, where this person's coming and where the conditioning came from, right? So I said earlier that the intuition and the warnings of the spleen, I was talked out of.
Yeah.
No, that's not what you're feeling. No, no, do it anyway. No, no, no. So you learn to not trust yourself.
Yeah.
And then I've got the 4426, which is like, okay, this is crap. This is crap. Why are we doing it this way? Right. So I don't fit in the background that I was born into at all, because I'm like, that makes no sense. So being taught that, and you have to squelch it. So I honestly had stomach aches and chest. Like I thought I had when I went to nursing school and learned about angina or angina, how people say it. It's like, I think I've had that my whole life. It's like crushing chest pain and stomach pain when you know that you're right and everyone else is like, no, you're not. It makes you cuckoo. And then my reaction was that. And then that's emotional because you can't fight back. You can't do anything. So it's like a hodgepodge. So not understanding my spleen made so much sense at the beginning because I didn't have any idea. And trusting myself, non-existent. I had to learn to trust myself. And human design helped me do that. And it was literally strategy and type, which is, oh, was I invited? No. Okay, good. So I've just saved myself a problem. Or I'd already be in the problem and I'd go, how did I get here? I wasn't invited. Oh, so it's that those experiences help you build up trust again, right? And I think that experience trained my spleen, the intuitive piece. So I began to trust. That's why I think I feel like they came together at some point.
Yeah. So you feel like for you, it was first like learning, okay, wait till I'm invited, then understanding the recognition piece that goes in there. Because a lot of times we get invited, but they don't really want us. They just want a body to fill the seat or somebody who'll do it for free or whatever. Or they want, something that's really not who we are, right? Or they want us to change to make it work.
Right.
Right. So that's not recognition. And then so I feel like that's great because it brings it in layers that's not so overwhelming. Sometimes because for me with the emotional authority piece, oh my God, trying to understand what emotional authority is when you have an open head and ajna, I was like forever just like, okay, I don't know what to do. I can't make a decision. So I would just be lost in my head and ajna thinking and trying to figure it out and asking questions and annoying everyone with my indecisiveness and my verbally processing everything the way that I do, but it wasn't using my
Wasn't it?
no. And I still didn't know what it meant. And
Yeah.
it just kind of got in the way of everything else. And I think that's really like everybody talks strategy and authority like they're married, but I kind of like the idea of sometimes just saying, okay, let's just start with recognizing who you are. Right. And especially like, the waiting for the recognition. Well, recognize yourself first. Right. That feels really really good. Like, I like that. I'm gonna start to lead with that. I think with projectors, especially. I don't know if it's as important to separate. I think with the generator types, the understanding the sacral and the lack of, what's the word I'm trying to think of, like, and the layer of the emotional authority on top of the sacral might be a little bit more important in the beginning,
Yeah, I
because
think
the
so.
respond is connected. You can't teach them, you're here to respond. Well, what's the response? The response is this internal thing. But I think for a projector, I love the idea of just really getting focused on the recognition and the invitation. So I thank you
Yeah,
for
that's just how it went for me. I want to just speak to what you just said about the generator and the emotional piece, if they're emotional, that anybody who comes to me that has emotional, what is the word? Definition. I will, or authority, I teach them together.
Right.
Like first we obviously talk a lot about that, and then, okay, this piece. And do you recognize that in your life? Can you relate to what I'm saying about it? Because I'm not emotional. I have an open emotional center. So I don't 100% know what that feels like. But
Yeah.
this is what the book says. So what do you experience? Tell me. And we talk about that. But one of the things that I have acquired over the years that I didn't expect to, but just having talked to so many emotional people and spoken to the same person over months, I can see when the emotional wave is doing its thing. Like I can actually see them change. So I'll give you an example, if that's okay. Can I give you an example? Do we have
Yeah.
time? We're on time,
Yeah,
aren't
we're
we?
okay. We're okay. We
Oh,
were going to wrap up soon, but we're fine.
oh yeah, this really, when it clicked for me, what does it look like and feel like? Is I had a client and she had a decision to make about this beloved home that she didn't want to give up, but had to because they needed to move and do all this stuff, right? So she was holding up the whole process because she knew what had to be done. She'd responded to it and so forth, but her emotional wave had not settled, right? And she had a wonderful husband that, so where are you at today? Kind of thing. And what I watched was I saw her come into working with me, with this idea. And then as she couldn't make the decision, and she started to look every time she came into the room, she started to look more and more disheveled. This is like a very clean with it woman, but she would come in and either her hair was wet from just coming out of the shower, or it was, or she wasn't dressed as she usually was. It's like really, so it wasn't depression. It wasn't anything like that. It was frustration, embodied frustration that I could see. And then one day she came in and she said, yeah, so this is what we're doing. And the decision had been made night and day,
Yeah.
night and day. So I thought, that's what it looks like.
Yeah.
It took her weeks.
It's interesting because, my husband is not emotional at all. He's completely open emotional solar plexus. And I have that 3955 really, and he bridges all my splits. So like I used to spend so many times talking to him about things. And I had a great example of this yesterday. We're putting cabinets in our laundry room, and we got these cabinets from a neighbor so they were free. And that's why my husband says, okay, we can do this. And he's painting them. And so they look beautiful now. And I don't want to put some crappy, cheap countertop on there. I want to do something nice. And I told him, I asked in this decorating group and people suggested butcher block might look good with that. And he's like, it's not a kitchen. Why would we put butcher block? And so I was like, well, and so, but there's this whole thing where I have not decided what I want in there, but he has this very definitive, no, I don't want this. It doesn't make sense because he's logical. And so then I get into this narrative where I start defending my right to a thing I'm considering during my wave. And I had to finally, I have learned, so I stopped myself. Just so you know, I have not decided I want butcher block. I'm just telling you it is a valid thing for me to be considering. So just because I have to clarify it, because my wave in the process of talking to him, I would always find I'd get one side amplified back from him because he could know in the moment what was the right thing. And I had to
Mhm.
defend my right to not be certain yet. And then
Right.
it confused the hell out of him because he'd think I decided on whatever the thing was that I'm now
Yeah.
defending the side. So that's been a really interesting part of the way. But what I've realized
That's
normally, I just have to get to where I'm almost decided before I talk to him
mm,
about it, because otherwise that's exactly what happens is his defined sacral, defined spleen, logical circuitry just knows what the answer is, right? So
yeah. Oh, that's a great example as well
anyway,
of that in relationship to someone who
yeah.
doesn't have it. I love
So
that. Yeah.
it's 1:02, so I guess at least here it is. I know it's not there. It's much earlier,
I know
Brigitte.
too.
Was it 10:02? Yeah. Okay. So yeah, she's on the West
Yeah.
Coast. So there are some great comments in here, and I did want to just say that Brigitte, Lisa Payne said that you really helped her to recognize her emotional wave by telling her, "Do you need to respond at this moment?" There's a bunch of nice little comments in there.
Oh,
I don't see
thank
any
you,
other
Lisa.
questions right now. So I would love for you to just take a minute and let everybody know, like, what you're doing and how they can connect with you before we just end this up.
Oh,
And I
thank
want to
you. Thanks for the
thank you
opportunity.
deeply for accepting this invitation. So I've really
Oh,
enjoyed
I
it.
really enjoyed it. I just want as an object lesson. This is what happens when two projectors get together. It's just back and forth, back and forth. I love it. Thank
Right?
you for inviting me. So my journey has taken me to the point where, let's see, I was a nurse, then I was a therapist, and now it's all mushed in and I'm a human design a coach using all of that stuff, right? And I have been coaching one-on-one for a really long time and talk about third line and talk about invitation, been told over and over again, for your energy's sake, why don't you scale your business and do more than one person at a time? And I've been hearing it for a long time, couldn't do it, didn't feel good, can't, gotta. So now when I look back, I'm thinking 3 years of one-to-one, this is where it's brought me. So I've just been working for the past year on a group and individual coaching program called Human Design Mastery. Love it. So excited because I'm so ready. And it's group coaching so people can kind of learn from each other what it's like to be a manifestor, what's it like to be an MG, what's it like to be, like be in that kind of community. And then if they have personal things that they're working on, they can also book time. So they have like 30-minute back pocket calls that they can use. And then I'm going to be bringing in the artist way as well. So we're going to do some creativity around our design. What did you always really want? And then kind of dive into it that way. So I'm very excited about that. So people can find me at my name, BrigitteKnight.com. I don't know if it's on there, but it's BrigitteKnight, like knight in shining armor knight.com, and they can learn more about me there. I have some free stuff on there. I have blogs. Yeah, they can come talk to me. I love talking, as you can see.
Okay, so after the call, you'll drop those connections in the comments on the video so people
Sure.
can find it easily. That would be great.
Happy to.
And
Yeah.
this will be on YouTube later, and I'll put it in the I'll put those in the description notes. So if you're watching this later on YouTube, it will be in there as well. So as time has flied. Okay.
Blown.
Okay. Right. I don't know.
Fine.
Yeah, I just make up words, right? Um, well, it's not really a made up word, it's just a bad grammar. So anyway, I want to thank you so much for your time and for, this great conversation. I really appreciate it. And every week we share stories of how my guests have come to understand themselves in a more loving and empowering way through the lens of human design. How you think and speak about yourself matters. Human design can show you the reframe of not only your own story, but the story you tell yourself about your relationships. If you're ready to start living a better story, I'd love to help guide you. So if you'd like to work with me, you can DM me and set up a free discovery call or at kathybashanko.com. So, and find me in the Intuitive Human Design group where everybody's watching this right now. And hopefully we'll see you all next week. Thank you very much.